Everybody, my name is Zainab Zubair and I'm a senior change lead looking after disruptive digital technologies such as Office 365. And I want to talk to you today about a few things that I think you should consider before you move onto the platform, especially in the run up to making this change in your organization. The first thing that I think is important is to look at your infrastructure. So as a change manager, we often come in when the decision has been made to move to the platform. The license have been bought, the strategic reasons for moving on to Office 365 have been decided, the business cases have been written, feasibility studies done, project managers assigned, and then they bring a change manager on. Often they haven't had this experience before. They don't know that actually when it comes to rolling out Office 365, it's important to actually engage with your infrastructure and architecture teams to understand the lay of the land before you make this move. And what I mean by that is try and understand what users are currently doing. Are they laptop users? Are they using virtual desktops? Are they highly disparate? Are they based in different offices? Understanding how good your internet is, because when you're moving from on-premise servers onto the cloud, basically everything's going to be accessed over the internet moving forward. So really building those personas, but really understanding the architect's vision, and asking really plain questions like, okay, how am I going to access it? Do I need things like multi-factor authentication? Most of these projects tend to fail because people haven't done what they're supposed to do, because as any seasoned communications professional will know, people don't read things. So you have to tell people in several different ways, and I'll come on to campaigns in a second, but I really think engaging with your technical teams, understanding the architecture function, understanding the licenses, what are users actually getting? Is it just going to be an exchange migration where all they're going to have is their email in the cloud so that they can access it from anywhere or any device? Are you putting steps in to ensure that actually they can't access it from any other device? Because some organizations will decide that they can't open their Office 365 portal on a device outside the company that's not managed. So understanding actually what the change means and what the architects have put into play is important. Because that means when you're trying to sell the benefits of the product, whether it's a managed release of a few of the different applications versus the whole suite of applications, understanding whether they're going to have Teams and Planner and Flow and all the other apps versus just an Exchange migration, and understanding what the strategy is important to that communication message. So, number one, get in touch with your architects and the technical teams. The second thing is to look at your stakeholders. I have rolled out Office 365 in organizations where there has been a lot of heat at the top based on cost, and that's the reason they've gone onto Office 365. What they haven't realized is alongside the cost gains that you get from moving to the cloud, removing your dependence on on-premise based servers, you also end up finding that you've got all these great productivity tools, and that's not something that has been endorsed by your executive committees. So creating a example of what the future would look like, how people could work, how they can take meeting notes, how they can share, what document management may look like. If they're not using SharePoint and it's a foreign concept to them, it's probably important to get them to understand what Teams and SharePoint, what the difference is, what OneDrive can do to them, and getting a few sort of meetings in place with people at that sort of senior level so that they become they're on board with this change, rather than something that they're going to sort of throw back on you to say, well, I don't actually see the point of this. I work through my email and that's it. So it's important to start looking at your stakeholder groups, finding your change champion community, but also trying to find the people that would actually be the naysayers in an organization, the people that are always resistant to change. If you can take them on board, if you can narrate to them what the benefit is for them, what's in it for them, you will find that they would actually become advocates. And even if they're not advocates, at least they have been consulted and heard rather than completely pushed to a side and ignored, because that's a lot of often what we do in change management is we get those early adopters, we get those people excited about change and who can help us on the journey to help adopt the change, but we don't tend to really focus on the negative people that can actually, that need, and often they're people of great influence, and they're coming from a place sometimes that is justified because they have seen IT change go wrong. And they know their business areas quite well, so they can be quite possessive. So it's important for you to listen to them and for them to be heard. The next thing is to enable continuous learning. So with Office 365, some of the things you need to think about is your communication strategy and your learning. Now, one of the things I have learned is that engaging your HR teams, your internal communication teams, is what you need to do, because Office 365 is not purely an IT change. It is actually culture change. It is changing the way people work. People are given laptops, they're using Windows 10, they're using mobile phones and applications. They will be able to access their email on personal devices. But equally, there's a change around sharing, there's a change around how you communicate with others. It's slightly more informal if you start using things like Teams, chat. So as much as some companies, the HR teams may see this as purely an IT project, they may be considered stakeholders in working groups and steering committees, but I think there's a bigger view, especially if you want to use tools like SharePoint for document management, maybe build an intranet on that in the future, or you may consider using tools like Stream, which was previously Office 365 Video, because those are actually communication tools for a company which shouldn't really be owned by IT. So the sooner you can get HR, internal communications people, marketing, branding, involved in that decision process and understanding the applications of these tools to the business, then you've got people who can start enabling the adoption of these tools, to start using them for their strategic purposes, whether it's creating a team, whether it's creating a SharePoint site, whether it's sending links through OneDrive. And that culture change can only be driven when you have people from different facets of the business rather than purely an IT-led change. And then sort of not finally, I think it's important to understand which tools fit your organization. So whilst I'm an advocate for throwing tools out there and getting people to embrace the tools that they really want to use. So for example, I know some stakeholders who love OneNote. They swear by OneNote, but they won't touch something like Planner. And then I have other stakeholders who love things like Planner and Teams, and you may find other people are sort of more in tune to using applications on their phone. So really, it's about creating those use cases and personas. So there's two schools of thought. One is the traditional IT release management process, which is we roll out Outlook, then we roll out Teams, then we roll out, in the old world, Skype for Business, Planner, etc. But actually, to make the most of all of these collaborative tools, they kind of all sing and dance and work together. The more you use Office 365 tools, the more it'll surface in Delve. If you look in Delve, you're only going to see your AD profile and Outlook. You're not going to see the documents that have been shared, the relationships between people, if you're not actually using the tools properly. So I think it's good to do a bit of an audit around the personas in the business, and maybe if you really want to go down the route of managed releases of these applications, create an early bird or change champion community that can go away and play with some of these applications. The other school of thought where you just release everything and then let people play with it and come up with their own sort of use cases, that's fine. But if you're going to do that, you have to provide a lot of guidance. You have to get them to understand that if they're building applications on Power Apps or they're creating flows that perhaps your IT support teams may not have the capability and are not upskilled yet to support those sort of citizen-driven applications and building ecosystems that are not part of a structured support process. So there's a mix. There's a mix of strategy. Whichever one you go for, you need to tailor your approach, and it's important to understand that with things like Teams, it's moving at such a fast rate that it's probably best to have a partner on board, a Microsoft partner that understands the whole roadmap. And you may say that, oh, actually, we're not going to use Teams right now because it's not providing telephony, it's not providing chat and all of that stuff. But then 6 months down the line, as is the case now, Teams is a full feature parity tool that can be used as a meeting platform, that can be used as a chat platform. So understanding your strategy and understanding which tools you're going to use and who's going to use it. As much as you can't control the usage, you can't really tell people don't use Teams for this, don't use OneNote for that, because there may be other systems that information needs to go into. You can provide guidance, but also you will find that these sort of tools are quite organic. And once you show people a team that has used it in a particular way, whether it's to structure meetings or to do recurring tasks in Planner, or to organize how they do their documents with metadata and tags, that is usually translatable across an organization. Everyone shares documents. Most people do meetings. Most people travel or are based in disparate locations, or want to be flexible and want to use their phones. So really coming up with maybe 4 or 5 big use cases for the different tools and different ways of working, and then sharing it to your community and seeing what sticks. Don't be disheartened if some of it doesn't stick, and you will get a lot of pushback. But before you go live with some of this, you need to understand which tools are going to disrupt and which tools are actually going to be productive and help. So it's important to have some of that thinking before you go ahead with your Office 365 migration. Yeah, well, I hope that's been useful. I'm going to do my next talk around Teams and some of the things you need to think about when you're rolling out Teams. Thank you for listening.